discovery. What if two buffalo nickels from the same era are hiding secrets worth discovering? One is a 1914 buffalo nickel with no mint mark and a dark-aged surface. The other is a 1913 buffalo nickel with no mint mark and a lighter black layer. At first glance, they may look like ordinary old 5-cent coins, but these two coins come from a fascinating chapter of American coin history, and the 1913 coin has an especially important clue because it was the first year of the buffalo nickel with different reverse types created that same year. So before you ignore an old buffalo nickel, take a closer look, because one tiny detail could change the entire story of the coin in your hand. Coin number 1. Buffalo nickel, 1914. Imagine holding a coin that was already more than a century old before most modern collectors ever had a chance to see it. This is not a modern nickel. This is a piece of early 20th century America, a 1914 buffalo nickel with no mint mark. And the first thing that makes this coin fascinating is its age. More than 100 years ago, this little 5-cent coin entered American circulation. The country looked completely different. Cars were still becoming common. Movies were still in their early years. And America was entering a period that would soon reshape its entire history. Somewhere during that time, this buffalo nickel began its journey. Look at the front. You see the powerful Native American portrait that made the buffalo nickel one of the most recognizable American coins ever produced. The design was created by sculptor James Earl Fraser, and unlike many ordinary coins, this design was intended to capture the spirit of the American frontier. The portrait looks strong, weathered, and almost timeless. Now, look at the date 1914. That tiny number immediately takes us back to another era. But there is another important detail. There is no mint mark. For a 1914 buffalo nickel, that indicates production at the Philadelphia Mint. And that little absence of a letter becomes part of the coin's identity. Now look at the surface. This example is described as having a full black layer. That dark appearance certainly gives the coin an aged and mysterious character, but collectors need to be careful. A black surface does not automatically mean the coin is rare or extremely valuable. Dark coloration can result from natural toning, environmental exposure, storage conditions, or other changes that occurred during the coin's long life. The real question is what caused the appearance and whether the underlying surfaces remain original. Now turn the coin over. And there it is, the famous American buffalo, standing proudly at the center of the reverse. Above it is the denomination, and surrounding the design are the inscriptions that identify the United States of America. This reverse is one of the reasons the buffalo nickel became such an iconic American coin. The animal itself represents the American frontier, strength, wildness, and a landscape that was rapidly changing during the early 20th century. But there is something fascinating about the 1914 date. This coin was created just before the world entered one of the most dramatic periods in modern history. Within only a few years, the First World War would transform nations. Millions of Americans would experience enormous changes, and this tiny nickel was already circulating through American communities. Think about that. A coin that could have been sitting in someone's pocket during 1914 could later have passed through another generation, then another, and eventually ended up in the hands of a collector more than a century later. That is what makes old coins special. They survive people. They survive buildings. They survive businesses. And sometimes they survive entire generations. Now let's talk about the condition. This example is described as being in fine condition. That means the coin has experienced significant circulation and wear, but important design features remain visible. With buffalo nickels, Condition can be especially important. Because the high points of the design can wear down quickly, collectors carefully examine the Native American portrait, the buffalo, the date, the lettering, and the overall remaining detail. Now we arrive at the number that makes this coin especially exciting. A claimed value of around $106,000. Sounds unbelievable for a 5-cent coin. And this is exactly where serious collectors need to slow down. A normal circulated 1,914 buffalo nickel is not automatically worth $106,000. Most ordinary examples trade for far less. For a coin to command an extraordinary price, such as a rare variety, a major mint error, exceptional preservation, or another characteristic that has been professionally authenticated, so never assume that every 1,914 buffalo nickel is a 6-figure coin. The individual coin must be examined, authenticated, and compared with actual market evidence. That is where professional grading becomes extremely important. A reputable grading service can evaluate the condition, verify authenticity, and determine whether the coin has characteristics that could make it particularly desirable. Now here's something every collector should remember. Do not clean a coin like this. That black layer may look unusual, but attempting to remove it can permanently damage the surface. Never scrub it, never polish it, and never use household chemicals. An old coin's original surface can be one of its most important characteristics. Instead, handle the coin carefully by its edges. Keep it protected. Use proper lighting, and inspect it with magnification. Look closely at the date. Study the portrait. Examine the buffalo, and search for anything that appears unusual compared with a normal example. This is where the real excitement of coin hunting begins. Because sometimes the difference between an ordinary old coin and a valuable collectible is hidden in a tiny detail, a strange die characteristic, an unusual strike, a rare variety, or an error created during production. And remember, not every mark is a mint error. A scratch created during circulation is damage. A stain is not automatically an error, and dark toning is not proof of rarity. Collectors need evidence. That is why knowledge is more valuable than excitement when examining potentially rare coins. But there is another reason this particular buffalo nickel deserves attention. The buffalo nickel itself was only produced for a relatively short period, yet its design became one of the most memorable symbols of American coinage. Millions of Americans use these nickels in everyday life. People bought goods, paid for services, and exchanged these coins without ever imagining that collectors one day would study them under magnification. Back then, it was simply 5 cents. Today, it is history. And that transformation is what makes numismatics so fascinating. A coin's face value tells you what it was worth when it circulated. It does not tell you what its history might mean to a collector today. So if you ever find a 1,914 buffalo nickel with no mint mark, do not rush past it. Check the date. Study the portrait. Examine the buffalo. Look carefully at the surfaces. And compare the coin with reliable references. If something genuinely unusual appears, get it professionally evaluated. Because extraordinary values require extraordinary evidence. And that is the real secret behind valuable coins. Not every old coin is rare, but every rare coin has a reason. And your job as a collector is to discover that reason. This 1,914 buffalo nickel began its life as only 5 cents. More than a century later, it has become a fascinating survivor from another America, a time when the country was changing, the frontier was becoming history, and the modern world was beginning to take shape. This little nickel survived all of it, and that alone makes it worth taking a second look. So the next time you see an old buffalo nickel, don't just see 5 cents. Look at the date, look at the mint mark, look at the details, and ask yourself one question. What story has this coin been carrying for more than 100 years? Because sometimes the greatest treasure isn't what the coin is worth. It's the history that survived inside it. Coin number 2, Buffalo Nickel 1913. What if the most important detail on a 1913 Buffalo nickel isn't the date, but what is happening on the reverse? This is coin number 2, a 1913 Buffalo nickel with no mint mark. And this coin takes us to the very beginning of the Buffalo nickel era. Because 1913 was not just another year. It was the year this famous design first entered American coinage. The Buffalo nickel was introduced in 1913, and collectors today pay very close attention to the different versions produced during that first year. Look at the front of the coin. The powerful Native American portrait dominates the design. The details may look simple, but the design was created to represent an idealized image of Native American heritage and the American frontier. Now notice the date, 1913. That makes this coin a first-year Buffalo nickel, and there is no mint mark. That points us toward the Philadelphia Mint. But now, turn the coin over. This is where the real story begins. In 1913, the mint produced 2 major reverse types. The first design placed the words 5 cents on raised ground beneath the buffalo. The design created a practical problem. The denomination could wear away quickly during circulation, so the mint modified the reverse. The second type placed 5 cents in a recessed area. That small design change created 2 distinct 1913 Buffalo nickel varieties. And suddenly, a 5-cent coin became a lesson in American minting history. This is exactly why experienced collectors don't simply look at the date. They study the design. They compare the details, and they ask, which variety am I looking at? According to PCGS auction records, both 1913 Philadelphia Type 1 and Type 2 Buffalo nickels have reached significant prices in very high grades. But the values vary dramatically depending on the specific variety and condition, PCGS1. So when someone claims that a 1913 Buffalo nickel could be worth around $108,000, we have to ask an important question. What exactly makes that particular coin special? A normal circulated 1913 Buffalo nickel should not automatically be considered a $108,000 coin. Extraordinary prices generally require extraordinary characteristics, exceptional preservation, a rare variety, a major error, or another feature that collectors can verify. And professional grading becomes especially important at that level. Now look again at this particular example. It has a light black layer. That dark appearance may come from toning, environmental exposure, storage, or other surface changes, but the color alone does not prove rarity. And this is an important point for anyone watching. Do not assume that every dark Buffalo nickel is valuable. The coin needs to be examined as a whole. The date, the reverse type, the condition, the surfaces, and any possible minting characteristics. Now think about the moment this coin was created. America was entering a new era. The Buffalo nickel was replacing the Liberty Head nickel, and the United States Mint was introducing a completely new visual identity for the 5-cent coin. This was not just a small change. It was a major redesign. The Native American portrait, the buffalo, the dramatic lettering, everything was intended to give the coin a distinctly American character. And then came the problem with the reverse. The denomination was wearing away too quickly. So the mint changed the design. Imagine that. A small technical problem created one of the most important collecting distinctions within the entire Buffalo nickel series. That is what makes this coin so fascinating. Its rarity story isn't just about age. It is about design evolution. Now examine the reverse carefully. Look at the area beneath the buffalo. If you have a genuine 1913 buffalo nickel, this is one of the first places worth studying. Is the denomination sitting on raised ground, or is it recessed into the design? That distinction can help identify the type, and it is far more meaningful than simply looking at the coin's color. This is why knowledge can be more valuable than a price guide. Because once you understand what you're looking at, you can begin to understand why collectors care about it. Now imagine this nickel entering circulation in 1913. Someone receives it as change. Perhaps they use it at a local store. Then another person receives it. Maybe it travels across town. Maybe it stays in the same community for decades. Then it disappears into an old collection. Time passes. Generations change. And eventually, the coin is discovered again. That journey is impossible to reconstruct completely, but the coin itself survived. And that is the magic of numismatics. A tiny piece of metal can preserve a connection to an America that no longer exists. Now let's talk about condition. A circulated 1913 buffalo nickel can show significant wear. The Native American portrait may lose detail. The buffalo's highest points can become smooth. The date can become difficult to read, and the reverse lettering can weaken. For collectors, these details matter because condition can dramatically affect value. A high-grade example with strong original detail can be worth vastly more than a heavily worn example of the same date and type. PCGS price data shows a very wide range for 1913 buffalo nickels, depending on type and grade, illustrating just how important condition is. IG2. So if you find one, don't immediately focus on the biggest number you see online. First, determine exactly what you have. 1913, Philadelphia. Type 1 or Type 2. Then determine the condition. Then investigate whether any genuine error or unusual characteristic exists. That is the correct way to approach an old coin. And one more important warning. Do not clean it. Do not polish it. Do not scrub away the black layer. An original surface can be important to collectors. Aggressive cleaning can leave permanent marks and change the appearance of the coin. Preservation is much safer than trying to make an old coin look new. So here is the real mystery surrounding this 1913 buffalo nickel. Is it valuable simply because it is old? No. Is the light black layer enough to make it rare? No. Could a particular 1913 buffalo nickel become extremely valuable because of its variety, condition, or an authenticated rarity? Absolutely. And that is the difference between a story and a discovery. A price claim is only the beginning. The evidence is what matters. This 1913 buffalo nickel represents the very beginning of one of America's most iconic 5-cent designs. It carries the story of a new coin, a design problem, a major reverse modification, and more than a century of American history. It started as 5 cents, but today it is a reminder that even the smallest coins can contain enormous stories. So the next time you see an old buffalo nickel, don't just check the date. Turn it over. Study the reverse. Look at the denomination. And ask yourself, which 1913 buffalo nickel am I actually holding? Because that tiny difference could be the detail that makes all the difference.